Hello and welcome to Meet the Founder here at modl.ai, the video series where I sit down and interview the co-founders of the company and discuss the past, present and future of artificial intelligence for video game development. I am Tommy Thompson, and in this episode I sit down with Sebastian Risi, not only a co-founder of modl.ai, but also the company's research director. And without further ado, let's hear from the man himself. Sebastian, you were part of the founding team behind modl.ai in 2018, but tell us a little bit about yourself. What brought you into game development and research to begin with?
I was always very fascinated by games. So early on, I really loved playing like 3D shooting games. I spent way too much time playing Quake 3 during college, and before I really loved to play point-and-click adventure games. And early on, I was when I studied AI during my diploma in Germany, I was always very fascinated how to apply these things to games, because there's so many different things you can do. So already starting in my master thesis, I applied those methods to like the kind of like a capture the flag game. And then I was fascinated by it and wanted to continue it. And so I actually spent 1 year in a game AI startup that tried to make middleware for AI engines back in like 2007. But then I also wanted to do research. So then after that, I went to the US to do a PhD, but still was very fascinated. I always wanted to do the research I'm doing, wanted to connect it somehow to games, wanted to make kind of new games that were enabled by this new type of AI techniques that we're developing. So in the US, we actually started, during my PhD, I had a startup that tried to commercialize it, developing like this kind of Facebook game that didn't really work out so well, but still fascinated by this, trying to incorporate AI in games and seeing what AI can do for games and what games can do for AI. And then actually I met Julian at a conference in Australia who told me about the position here. So I'm a professor at the IT university as well, and he told me about the position there. And that's how I came to actually Copenhagen. And then Julian and I became good friends and colleagues, and he also shares this passion, of course, for AI in games. And then we were sitting down and thinking, what can we use this technology for? We have done a lot of AI research in academia, but how can we kind of commercialize these technologies? What can they do for basically game developers? And from those kind of discussion, then like modl.ai was basically created. That we thought we shouldn't just apply these methods in the context of academia. They can actually accelerate game development. They can accelerate game testing and kind of revolutionize that field.
So one thing that's interesting about your story is how you worked with another startup prior to now. How much did that influence the work that you then did on modl.ai as it began to grow?
I think at that point when that startup was created, I think the time wasn't quite right yet. Tried to sell things like pathfinding to companies that they already had, and we developed some like very early on like neural network techniques. So it was kind of very difficult to sell these techniques to companies which already had, their own pathfinding and things and weren't so interested in neural networks. And I think then basically things started changing since then, that people like companies have seen that actually machine learning techniques, they actually work. Neural networks, you can train them, you can make them kind of controllable. There was always like a fear I think they had, that you have a neural network in the loop and you can't really control what's happening. And so I think the attitude changed a little bit, but it was great getting that perspective there and seeing that it's the challenges and the opportunities. And I think I learned from this and always wanted to still connect the research we're doing and using it for those cases. But I think it's multiple things coming together, that now we have methods that work better, companies embracing more AI, machine learning. So all of these things together, I think, makes it much a better field now to be in this space, basically.
The boom of deep learning in the current market has led to a better understanding of how machine learning could be employed in the likes of the video games industry, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee it's going to find a market. How confident were you that modl.ai would work out as envisaged?
I'm not sure I would say like 100% convinced, but I think I was confident that the technologies we have can work in this field. What I wasn't sure about, can we convince people to like game companies to use them, because many are kind of a little bit hesitant at first to embrace new technology. But I was confident that we had a We had a great team right from the start. I mean, we have the leading people in AI in games and procedural content generation in games. So I knew that we could assemble a really good team, basically. So that gave me a lot of hope that we can actually start something that can have impact. But it wasn't certain how readily it would be embraced by the game industry at that point. I think we were all hopeful, but of course it was hard to know.
You mentioned that the team that you've hired thus far is a mixture of researchers and PhD graduates alongside people with a lot of video game experience. I guess, how important has that composition been in the success of the company up till now?
You can have a lot of researchers that are great at coming up with approaches, but if they basically don't work inside of current game engines, if they're not performant enough, if they're not tailoring to the needs of the game industry, to the people, designers, game developers that using the system, then the best kind of technique will not bring you so far. So I think it's really crucial that we have a team with a lot of different kind of skills, and I think those working together well is kind of, I think, the secret.
Now that modl.ai has been up and running for 4 years, for yourself, Sebastian, what's the thing that you're most proud of as the company has begun to take shape?
First off, I think I'm very proud of the team, like how well I think the team is working together and everybody's pulling in one direction. The team we assembled is, I think, really exceptional, and I think that's something to be where everybody should be really proud of. From the kind of the research side, which is always, of course, what excites me, I think it's really this kind of our system to try to find bugs in games is really. I think that's really going to change how people look for bugs and do bug testing and find glitches. So I think I'm really proud of what the team is developing there. And some of the other work we did, I'm also really excited that we this collaboration we had with King, where we developed this procedural content generation for Candy Crush, which I think was a really fun project that shows that you can actually, with those techniques, you can learn from existing content and you can generate things that look basically close to real match tile game based levels. So those two things I think are the ones that I'm most excited about, but there are also a lot of other areas that I think are really exciting as well.
And now, looking into the future, what's the things that are on the horizon right now at modl.ai that you're most excited about?
The direction we're going, that we're trying to create these large-scale models of training from how people play games that could learn from data on, for example, YouTube, people playing games. We can use that data to train these large models that we can then use to, for example, playtest games, or we can use them to calibrate games, we can use them to find bugs. That's one thing I'm really excited about. So exploring how can we create agents that play very human-like by using a lot of the data that's already available online, and then how can we adapt them quickly to other games. If you have a human and the human already knows how to play Quake and Counter-Strike, then maybe they can also quickly adapt to a new shooter like Call of Duty. There are some things that are different, but the general kind of ideas are often the same. And doing something like this, the system would automatically learn to play this game, and then you can use it to test your game, you can use it to balance your game, you can use it for all kinds of different purposes.
It's interesting to me that unlike a lot of the other co-founders, you're still heavily involved in academic research, given you not only work here at modl.ai, but you're also conducting research at the IT University of Copenhagen. I guess, does the success of modl.ai enable you to conduct research that you possibly could not do within a university framework?
I think in the uni it would be very difficult following this kind of research, because you basically need a large team, you need people doing research, people doing engineering, and you need them all to basically work together, and you need a good amount of compute to train these systems. So I think this would be work that is very difficult to do, and I think that's why it's exciting to do this work at modl.ai, because we can actually train systems at large enough scale, and also having this kind of real world impact that then actually game studios can use these systems. I think that would be very difficult to achieve from if you only would do research at the uni. Here you can have a much larger impact on a very much growing industry, and I think that's pretty exciting.
And of course, looking at that from the other way around, I guess the fact that you're working on industry-relevant problems at modl.ai, does that then allow you to explore weirder projects at the university lab that you maybe wouldn't have, the capacity to do otherwise?
Yeah, it's definitely good to be aware of this, and that can allows you to kind of look a little bit also ahead where you might want to take research or what people might be interested in. I think the other thing that's really useful having one feet in both is that we have I think a great pipeline basically of talent. Some people in modl.ai basically they came from did a PhD in my lab at the university, and then they were hired at modl.ai. So I think that's a great opportunity for them also to, you learn about more theoretical about game AI in our game AI course at the uni, and then there's a company actually where you can go and you can actually apply those things in the real world, and you can actually work with game studios, and I think for a lot of students that's very exciting. And oftentimes we also have a guest lecture from somebody from modl.ai, and that's always a big hit in the class, that they actually see what these techniques, they don't just read about them in textbooks, but they're actually companies that use them to changing basically game development.
Yeah, I think having, a foot in both worlds really helps paint a broader picture, both of interesting opportunities that still need to be explored in academic research, as well as present and upcoming challenges that exist over in industry. Is that an insight that you're able to then feed back into your academic research and also for your students?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's basically, yeah, as you said, we're one of the very few companies that work in this kind of field. So it's a responsibility to kind of chart that that path. What are the interesting problems to work at? What are the interesting approaches to develop? And so I think it's a great opportunity kind of to being able to do basically both, and also being able to tell the students not just from a theoretical side how these things work, but actually telling them kind of stories from actually working on them in the applied field, and how things are adopted by the industry, which kind of approaches might work well in theory, but don't really work well if you incorporate, for example, humans. So I think that's also an interesting point, is that oftentimes most of these AI techniques that the students often learn about are they don't involve humans in the loop. So they learn about these techniques that that can do X and Y, and they can do planning and stuff, but it's never really talked so much about where does the human fit in. And so here at modl.ai, I think that's one of our core things, that we develop techniques that can be used by developers, and these techniques have to learn from users. So it's pretty central. We have a very human-centered AI approach that we need to develop, or that we're developing. Which is, I think, a little different to if you just read in a textbook about a lot of these kind of AI approaches.
So, bringing all of this to the close, one final question. For yourself, what is it that modl.ai is doing that nobody else is offering right now?
It has both the technology, it has the expertise, it has the people that do not only know about AI research basically, but we also know a lot about game development. We know how game development works, we know how different game companies work, so I think that puts us in a unique position to basically change that field, and how AI techniques can help game developers, revolutionizing how people can develop their games, how people can test their games, how people can generate content in games. All of these things, I think, need that kind of combined expertise. And I'm very excited about this automated testing, because we have more and more data from games, more and more people putting things on YouTube, on Twitch, playing all kinds of games. So we have AI techniques that can learn from all this experience, and then we can apply them to new games, and very quickly being able to test new games on hundreds of different devices in ultimately minutes, that would be very impossible to do basically just just a few years ago. So I'm excited about that future.
And that's it for this video. Special thanks, of course, to Sebastian for taking his time to chat with me, as well as to all of you for coming and checking out this video. Stick around here at modl.ai for even more of this Meet the Founder series, as well as finding out a little bit more about some of the work that's happening here in developing artificial intelligence for video game productions.